That's where the where we had the conference.
Right. So
that's Bridgeburg,
that's
right?
the old church. That's Bridgeburg, right? So, but if you're going, Bridgeburg's actually there's two sections of Bridgeburg. If you're by the Peace Bridge and you go down Queen Street, so you come along Central Avenue and you turn onto Queen Street and you follow Queen Street down to the River Road there. If you drive along and you keep going along, on the left-hand side is the big old, I think it's an Anglican church there. Let me just see.
Oh, I think I know the one you're referring to.
It's
yes.
up on a hill.
Yes, I've never stopped in, but yeah, if it's the
St.
one
Paul.
I'm thinking of, yep, I know the one you mean.
Mm-hmm. Go in there and check it out. It's definitely worth it. That's St. Paul's. It's St. Paul's in there. A lot of history in that cemetery, and really interestingly laid out. So it's got some interesting interesting features within that cemetery. That's a graveyard technically because it's attached to the church. So, but that's another one, and that's not too far. That's like an hour and a little, like what, hour 10, hour 20 from Hamilton, maybe.
Yeah, about an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad, right? So it's pretty close by. That's a cool one to go check out. It's just the way that even the graveyard is laid out is interesting, and there's some little interesting special features in there too that I'm not going to mention because I'm going to leave them to see if you find them, and then you can tell me if you get there if you've actually noticed them or not. Right. So another one that you may or may not know about that has an iron gate going in, and this one is an interesting one. Have you been to the little private cemetery from Willowbank? You know where Willowbank in Niagara, in Queenston Heights?
I know Willowbank.
Okay. There's a cemetery there.
That's just down from Queenston, isn't it?
Yeah. Just down from Queenston.
Oh,
so
okay. I know that. Yes, I know. I've not been there.
Okay. It's a hidden cemetery.
I know exactly the cemetery you mean. No, I haven't been there yet.
Oh, visit that one for sure. That's a great little cemetery. And you can drive your car right in if the gate is open. You're allowed to.
You can. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, I know. I've driven past it a million times.
It's so hidden though, like in a wink of an eye, you will miss it.
On the lake.
All right. It's one of those ones where I swear very few people know about it because it's so hidden, and
it's not advertised.
No, it's not advertised. Well, it's no longer used, right? It's an old family plot that literally belonged to Willowbank.
Right.
So it's like if you were to go down the Willowbank property down the back and walk down the hill, there's a river there, like the creek, the stream there. If you want to traverse over the stream, which you kind of can depending on the time of the year, and come up the other side of the hill, you'll find it that way, except it's way easier to just find it from the road. I said, most people drive by it and don't even know it's there because it's so well hidden. It's completely surrounded by trees. And that little fence that's there, the little gate, it is like it opens. It just looks like an old driveway, right? Kind of that, maybe belongs to the property next door. But it's you can actually park in there. And if the gate's open, you can drive in, or you can just park and you can walk in. You can go into that one. That's a great little cemetery in there too. And that one's got lots of little iron bits in it. Yeah,
never been there because, as I say, I know of it, but I didn't know if it was actually accessible or whether it was private or any of that. Yeah.
Well, it's technically private, but I was given permission by Willowbank to go in, but they also told me that it's not private. Like it's no longer used, and so you can go in there. Like you will not get, you're not going to get thrown out or anything if you're in there. So, they're not going to go, what are you doing here? This is private. But there's a lot of great little spots. There's a private family cemetery in Dundas as well. Have you been to that one up on the hill? Not the Dundas Cemetery, but there's a private family cemetery.
No.
It is across the road from where the old Metro used to be on, what is the name of that street? Starts with an O. Look at my brain trying to work.
Okay, I know. Yep, I know where you mean, yeah.
Have you been up in that one? That's at the end of a dead-end road.
I haven't.
You have to go up the hill. Oh, that's another one.
I know where the Metro was, yeah.
Yeah. So right across, if you were in the Metro parking lot and you were looking across the roadway, and there's a little side street with an apartment building, and if you go up that side street and you make a right, it's right there at the edge of the hill. And you have to drive down the end of the road and just park and walk in. It's an old private family cemetery. Again, you can go in and you can see it. You're allowed to. It's not, it's not off limits in terms of visiting it and taking photos and stuff. Another great little spot with a little wall around it with the iron gate. And you can enter, and it literally drops off into the Dundas ravine on the other side.
Right.
So so it's another cool little family spot there, little private cemetery. I think there's probably very few I don't know about or haven't been to at this point.
You've been around.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes with the job too, right? So, doing preservation and that. Like I actually when did I do that? I think it was in the spring. I did a workshop with Ruth End's conservators and showed them how to go in at the Irish cemetery, and I showed them how to clean the headstones and did a workshop with them there to do that so that they could clean up some of those headstones that they reset. See, and they did a good job. They reset those headstones on the old pieces and clean them all up and that. But I showed them how to remove the moss and the calcifications and that, and what to use on them and what to use, not to use on them in order to clean. And so that was a great little one too. And that's a really cool.
has 2 cemeteries.
They do. They have the family plot, and then they have the Irish Catholic.
The Thompson family cemetery, and then there's the cemetery from the old town of Indiana.
Right, and then there's another one that's still missing that goes to church too, right? Because the church for the Irish Catholic we don't know where that was. I still don't know. And apparently there was a little private family chapel which belonged to the Thompson plot, and that still nobody seems to know where it is. So that's sort of an interesting, that's an interesting thing there too for Ruth End. So, I've made my way around many a cemetery in my many years of doing what I do. But I just find that the Witch's Gate is a very fascinating piece of architecture that is not very common anymore. So. If anybody's listening and they live in the, sort of southern Ontario, I guess if you're closer to Hamilton, Doan's Hollow is essentially just outside Simcoe.
Yeah, Norfolk County.
Norfolk County, the town of Simcoe, as opposed to the region
between Simcoe and Port Dover. Yep.
Yeah, it's just right and tucked in there. And then if you go there to visit, then you can drive over to Port Ryerson because you're not very far, and you can go and check out the old Anglican church in Port Ryerson and the stones at the back of that one. And of course, again, there's a number of UELs in there, but there's also a number of Underground Railroad folks buried in there too. So
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a peaceful little place. It's tiny. It's beautiful. The church, I don't know if they're using the church anymore. I somehow don't think so. I put my phone camera up to the window and just took pictures through the window, just to see what was inside. It's not a big church. It's quite tiny. It's a wooden church. But it's in a beautiful spot, and again, it's got a rather significant little cemetery back there where, there's some quite old stones, and obviously people are looking after that one, which is nice to see. Right, it's nice to see that they're looking after it, and that's something too, right? That I think we need to be more aware of is looking at looking at cemeteries that have become very run down. It doesn't take a lot to clean them up, and to especially remove the bramble and the debris. I mean, you get 5 or 6 people together, you can clean it up over a weekend for the most part, and expose the headstones. You just need to find out who has control of the cemetery. A lot of the little abandoned old cemeteries are generally overseen by the municipalities now. So wherever you might find one of these little cemeteries or graveyards, for the most part, you need to get permission from the town that they're in. But a lot of times they're quite happy for people to come and clean up and to want to spend a weekend cutting back old branches and removing debris and that too, because it becomes overwhelming. But we have so many of these little sites all over the place, and like I said, I just love going to them because I find out all of these neat little things, right? Like witches' gates, or like these little iron elements that are built into the cemeteries and graveyards that if you don't know why they're there, you might not even see them, right? You might not look for them. But for everyone listening today, if you now go into one of these older cemeteries, keep your eyes open for those iron elements and get a bit better idea now of what they were there for.
Absolutely.
Right? They weren't just because it was a decorative wrought iron fence, or it's not just a decoration on a gravestone. It's not just a doorknob on a church, or a hinge, or a window latch. There's a number of reasons, and especially in those times, those early settler times, that they were bringing these superstitions with them and, implementing these forms of, apotropaic, whatever it is. It's apotropaic magic to them. So, it really is a form of magic that balances or protects you from the evil that they believed were, for some reason, stalking their people in the cemeteries.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
You've got to wonder, right, why they were worried about witches going into the cemetery. I guess because they believed that witches were going to dig up the grave sites and use the bones, right, of their loved ones for rituals and, for other horrific things. And so they wanted to make sure that
body snatchers.
The body snatchers, right? Although body snatchers, that certainly, that would make it difficult to get the body out of the cemetery. That's for sure. You wouldn't really be able to just walk it out with one of those big old turnstiles on the entrance either. So, there's probably a little bit of that in there as well, mixed into the whole the whole sort of superstitions of it. But I find it fascinating. And again, too, I look at so many elements of those things. Like when you were at Doan's Hollow, I don't know, did you take the time to look at how intricate that turnstile was? The wrought iron work
really,
on it?
As I say, when I was there, I was more interested in the stones themselves rather than the gate.
Did you take pictures of the gate?
I did take a few, yes.
Yeah, have a look at it. Have a look at it and just see how it's put together. Right, because it's
I remember
kind of
that you've got the with the turnstile and then the two basically I'll call them iron panels that ran off each side. Like there were crisscrossing beams, and it is very intricately put together. And as you mentioned, there's that arched beam going across the top of it. Yeah.
It's quite elaborate, and it's kind of funny because it almost looks like a paddock fence in a sense. But when you look at the shapes in the fence itself, you start to see some very distinctive patterns in there.